Patrice, it goes from bad to worse. Of course, as I said, Bob Diamond was dead man banking, and following the news that the chairman would step down, it was only natural that he would as well. Who'd want to get into his shoes now after the scandal that has rocked the retail banking and investment banking sector of the UK?
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay, it's definitely a hot seat in the UK right now. There are various candidates that are being mentioned at this point in time to take over the position, mainly internal candidates, the head of retail banking, Anthony Jenkins, or even the head of investment banking, Rich Ritchie. So it looks like they'll use one of the divisional heads as replacement. I mean, his chief operating officer is following him out of the door, so there's been a massive clean out if you take the chairman, the chief operating officer, and the CEO at Barclays.
Yeah, indeed. I wonder if he did it because he was asked to do so, whether he didn't want to face Parliament, whether it was political pressure. Does he still have to go before the Parliamentary Select Committee tomorrow, or whatever committee it is, in London, or does he get out of it now because he's not the CEO?
Well, that's interesting because it's already been announced that it looks like the outgoing chairman will be taking over the CEO reins for the time being. So assume that Marcus Aegis will be the one who goes to Parliament. But interesting question. I mean, the other thing which I picked up is that I find it very interesting how vocal George Osborne has been all over the media in the UK. I mean, talking about Diamond's departure being the right decision for Barclays, the right decision for the country, and that they needed Barclays' focus on lending. And he talks about the first step towards a new culture of British banking. So it's very interesting how vocal government has been there, with the Chancellor of Exchequer making these comments, and it looks like they've had a hand in terms of what happened.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it is, of course, they want to gain political ground. We know that. Vince Cable came out and said that the city is a cesspit. And now George Osborne, he said in Parliament yesterday, I watched him, and he said he's really looking forward to Bob Diamond coming in and giving him a good grilling. So maybe that was one of the reasons that Mr. Diamond stepped down. So it will be a wholesale, I think, revamp of the way that the city works. And also, I think some of the politicians might even review the links, the financing links they have with those banks. Anyway, it's an extraordinary story. What about relating this to South Africa now? Of course, the Absa link is an enormous one and very, very significant. And Absa's had its own problems, but I don't think that Bob Diamond's departure and the scandal at Barclays has much to do with Absa, does it?
No, I don't think so. Bob Diamond was known for being quite a big Africa fan. He saw the future of the bank in terms of growing the Africa footprint. I think a lot of the sort of new forays into Africa, where you had the investment bank sort of looking at Africa as a whole, and Absa Financial Services also sort of venturing further out into Africa, was driven by strategies that he saw for the entire group. Question mark for Absa is that whether the new person taking over from him will have a different view on Africa, which obviously will then have an impact on Barclays, on Absa. Sorry.
Yeah, indeed. If you look in the press this morning, there was quite an interesting article in Business Day this morning about Absa and how the fact that it's come within, I think, something like 8 or 9 billion rands worth of market cap to Nedbank, which has around about half its retail customers. So it suffered really badly. Of course, when there's a move like this in a market and all this corporate news flying around, it does present an opportunity. Without putting you on the spot too much, I suppose it's fairly obvious that Absa is still a really, really good business with a really good CEO. And although there's been a few management movements here and there, it is still a great business and has great potential as long as the South African unbanked continue to be banked. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it's very true. As you know, you've been around long enough to know that amongst the banks, they come in and out of favor. The bank who was the flavor of the day tends to sort of then rotate and go out of favor. Not too long ago, we had Nedbank under huge pressure. Then Mike Brown came, took over, and Ingrid Johnson fixed their retail franchise, and now they are flying quite high. So much so, as you say, that they within touching distance of the Absa market cap. So similarly, I think Absa are out of favor now. Retail banking is not the place to be, but like any cycle, this is not going to be the case forever, and they have the opportunity now to clear the decks, as one could call it, and sort of establish the next wave of growth, really, by having processes in place which would hold them in good stead for the next upcycle in retail, and that will come. The valuation is interesting as well, I would say. I mean, it's trading basically now on the same price to book value at 1.6 as Nedbank, and yeah, I mean, I think the market is really discounting the problem as a longer term problem going beyond the interim results that they're about to report. So one has to be patient, but usually in investments, as Warren Buffett says, you want to buy when everyone is fearful.
Yeah, indeed. I think what you have to do here is wait for the results to come out, Patrice, which is shortly, I understand, and just see what happens there. The trading update was bad. There is still going to be some fallout. You have to be patient, but I think long term, of course, Absa is a great business.